and welcome to the Pittsburgh City Council Cablecast public hearing for Wednesday, February 13th, 2019. My name is Ashley Robinson, and with us today is Caleb Wysocki, our sign language interpreter. The public hearing will be on the following legislation. Bill 2018-1212. Resolution providing for the designation of an historic structure under Title 11 of the Code of Ordinances that certain structure known as the Abrams House, located at 118A Woodland Road in the 14th Ward, City of Pittsburgh. Bill 2018-1213. A resolution providing for the designation of an historic structure under Title 11 of the Code of Ordinances that certain site known as the Westinghouse Memorial, located in Shenley Park in the 14th Ward, City of Pittsburgh. This concludes the reading for the Cablecast public hearing for Wednesday, February 13th, 2019. Thank you and have a wonderful day.
Good afternoon and welcome to Pittsburgh City Council's public hearing for Wednesday, February 13th, 2019 regarding bills 2018-1212 and 2018-1213. Will the clerk please read the title of the bills?
Bill 1212, resolution providing for the designation as a historic structure under Title 11 of the Code of Ordinances that certain structure known as the Abrams House located at 118A Woodland Road in the 14th Ward, City. Bill 1213, resolution providing for the designation as a historic structure under Title 11 of the Code of Ordinances that certain site known as the Westinghouse Memorial located in Shenley Park in the 14th Ward, City of Pittsburgh.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I believe that other members will be joining us shortly, but the first order of business will be presentations by Sarah Quinn from the city's planning department. Welcome.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, my name's Sarah Quinn. I'm the preservation planner for the city of Pittsburgh. Do you have a preference for, which item I present?
I don't have a preference, no.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and do, let's do the Westinghouse Memorial first. So it'll be a shortest presentation. But the Westinghouse Memorial lies in the northwestern section of Shenley Park in Pittsburgh, PA. It's comprised of architectural, sculpted, and landscape elements that are roughly bounded by Shenley Drive to the north and west, West Circuit Road to the south, and a forested rise of trees to the east. The architectural components of the memorial were designed in the modern style with heavy Beaux-Arts influences and consist of 3 independent panels curved in a near semicircle. Facing the central panel is a freestanding bronze statue, the Spirit of American Youth, which stands on a pedestal in the middle of a granite peninsula that extends to the pond. A small granite wall marks the perimeter of this component in a way that is purposefully reminiscent of a boat's prow. The statue is a life-size depiction of an adolescent boy holding a crumpled hat in his right hand and 2 books in his left. Just behind the statue and a step down to the west is a small granite bench. If you look to the front of your packet, you can see the photo, and then there are more photos on page 8 as well. All 3 solid bronze panels are approximately 10 feet high and 12 to 15 feet wide and sit atop a base of alternating black granite and sculpted bronze registers. The upper half of the left and right panels have 3 openings embellished with a penetrated oak leaf background and framed by an elaborate stylized scrollwork border. The center of each is a bas-relief panel depicting an accomplishment from the life of George Westinghouse and is supported by two turtles evocative of the world turtle motif. Below each bas-relief panel is a rectangular granite plaque engraved with the two corresponding accomplishments depicted above. The portrait is flanked by two high-relief figures on the left of a mechanic holding a hammer and to the right an engineer holding a roller. The Pittsburgh Press reported in September 19, 1916, that this Pittsburgh City Council initiated the movement to erect a memorial to the late George Westinghouse, asking the mayor to appoint a commission of 5 to consider the matter. On September 22, 1926, City Council granted the request to place the proposed George Westinghouse Memorial in Shenley Park and referred to the matter to the Art Department and Department of Public Works as a matter of routine. Henry Hornbostel, Eric Fisher Wood, David Chester French, and Paul Feig would ultimately be selected for the architectural and sculptural components. As the dedication day approached, Mayor Klein declared October 6, 1930, Westinghouse Day as other preparations were finalized. Opening remarks were made by A.L. Humphrey, chairman of the celebration and a trustee of the Westinghouse Memorial Committee. Humphrey concluded his remarks by reading a letter from President Hoover and the Secretary of Treasury, A.W. Mellon. Several speeches followed these opening remarks. After the dedication, a banquet was held for the dignitaries and other special guests at the William Penn Hotel. Downtown, during the additional speeches were made and guests were treated to a miniature cake version of the Westinghouse Memorial. I don't know if I have a picture of the cake in here, but it really did look like the memorial. I've got them back at my desk. On May 7th, 1931, Kei Hirayama, representing the Japanese Society of Mitsubishi Electrical Engineering Company in Tokyo, presented trees to Public Works Director Edward G. Lang and Park Superintendent James Moore and planted several of the trees in a ceremony. Years later, Henry Hornbostel would join Parks Superintendent in admiring the blossoms. The Historic Review Commission felt that the Westinghouse Monument was significant as an exemplification of a distinguished architectural type, style, or design. The Westinghouse Memorial's exceptional design distinguished by innovation, rarity, uniqueness because it does not rigidly adhere to any particular design approach. Consensus since the time of its creation has generally defined the memorial as modern in style because it does not employ stylistic elements from any defined artistic movement, but rather integrates traditional design approaches to modern building materials. As I was saying earlier, it's sort of a mishmash of a bunch of different things. It has the turtle motif, bronze plaques, children, things of that nature. The Historic Review Commission also felt that this monument was significant because it was the work of an architect, engineer, designer, or builder. As many folks know, Henry Hornbostel was a prominent architect in the city of Pittsburgh. He was born in Cobble Hill, Brooklyn in 1867. He came to Pittsburgh about 1904 to design the campus of Carnegie Tech. He founded the Department of Architecture at Carnegie Tech around the same time. As his career progressed, Hornbostel chose Pittsburgh as his base for independent practice, but he also resided and worked in New York. Over the course of his career, he was a partner in the firms Howell Stokes Hornbostel, Wood Palmer Hornbostel, Palmer Hornbostel, and Jones. Let me see. Finally, the commission felt that this monument was significant because of its unique location and distinct physical appearance or presence. The Westinghouse Memorial maintains a distinctive physical appearance as it is an established visual feature in Shenley Park. The property maintains a high degree of integrity in location, design, setting, workmanship, feeling, and association. It is in the original location and has recently undergone an accurate restoration by Pittsburgh Department of Public Works. So both the Historic Review Commission and the Planning Commission provided positive recommendations to City Council for this monument. So that's what I have, sure.
Feel free to, unless there are questions from council members at this point, feel free to move on to the the next
Oh,
item.
okay. Okay, the next nomination up for review is for the Abrams House. And I found a old photo on the front. The Betty and Irving Abrams House, commonly known as the Abrams House, is located at 118A Woodland Road. It's a 2-bedroom, 2.5-bathroom house seated on roughly a third of an acre of land in Squirrel Hill near the campus of Chatham University. Built between 1979 and 1982, the house had one owner since its construction, the Abramses, who lived in it until Mrs. Abrams' death on February 6, 2018. The Abrams Venturi House is a frame and masonry construction with a rolled roof, demonstrating conventional building methods. With stone-faced ponds abutting the first floor living room and dining area and being connected under the first floor via culverts to reflect the site's historic water course. And if you look in your packet, we have some photos on page 5, but what's interesting is there's a cross-section plan drawing on page 6 that shows the water course underneath the property, right there. In 1979, Mrs. Abrams commissioned the internationally acclaimed architect Robert Venturi to design the house. The house was to be sited on a lot that was the back portion of a lot fronting on Woodland Road. The buildable area of the lot straddled a swale which parallels Woodland Road and Shady Avenue and was graced by a historic stone bridge that once spanned a stream running through the swale. The Historic Review Commission felt that this property was significant as an exemplification of a distinguished architectural type, style, or design. The Abrams House was the first postmodern building in Pittsburgh, and as such represents a unique example of building style in Pittsburgh. Proponents of the postmodern movement reintroduced traditional architectural forms into predominantly abstract architecture of the 1960s. Simple in its materials, the exterior of the home reflected Venturi's principle of the decorated shed, where ornament and other design elements were applied to the basic form of the building. The front of the Vanna Venturi house did not match the back. The interior unfolded from the entryway into space that could not be expected from the outside. Inside, Venturi played with form, scale, and other relationships that challenged the straightforward nature of modern architecture that preceded this design. The British architectural historian Richard Payne visited the house in 2002, reviewed it in an architectural journal, Blueprint, in which he called it a secret masterpiece. Venturi, an architectural historian, writer, and architect who led the 1960s challenge to the definition of modernism prevailing since the 1930s, would later write, "Upon visiting the house, I am now considering the project one of the best that has come out of our office. I am very, very proud of." The Abrams Venturi House also contributes to the very lively, diverse collection of extraordinary architecture within the Woodland Chatham neighborhood of Pittsburgh, which includes the Frank House, Walter Gropius and Marcel Brewer architects, the Apt House, James Spire architect, the Giovannitti House, Richard Meyer architect, which shares a driveway with the Abrams Venturi House and is presently being restored by the people who also own the Abrams Venturi House. So, both the Historic Review Commission and Planning Commission provided a positive recommendation for City Council regarding this property. If you'll notice on page 7 of your packet, item number 10 identifies a question of law, I believe, that needs to be answered regarding this property, not with the other ones. And I'm sure that you'll hear about this in the comments. There is some question about the visibility of this property from a public right-of-way. And as I said, it needs to be confirmed with the law department, but the Historic Review Commission only has purview over things that can be seen from a public right-of-way. And there is question about this property, so what I would say, what my advice would be, is to go and drive by, take a look for yourselves, and consult the law department, but I certainly think it would have been inappropriate for me to not have mentioned this now. So that is what I have for you guys.
Thank you, Ms. Quinn.
Sure.
I just have one question for you.
Sure.
I'm very familiar with the site.
Okay.
I've been by many times.
Very
I've
good.
visited many times. It's in the district I represent.
Mm-hmm.
Would you be able to conduct your due diligence were this to be nominated historic? I understand that there's work that needs to be done by a city planning representative, and it would be you to complete that process. Would you
Well-
be able to, given that it exists off of a private road that's not accessible to the public?
That I think is the question that we need to have answered.
And that's
Is it a private road? Do we have? I mean, because I have driven down it, Woodland Road, to look, see if we could see it. We had traffic behind us, so we couldn't really slow down. It leads from straight into the campus of Chatham University. So I think it would be something that would have to be answered by the law department of like in the context of that road, like what does that mean for public employees? And then there's also the question of the location of this property, the location of this building down in the swale back behind the main house. Because there's also that issue where there might just be a small piece of the roof visible. So that was a question that was asked by my director to the law department when we received this nomination. And they felt that that was a question that they weren't prepared to answer, that they said, this isn't about historic project review, it's about a nomination. But very clearly in our ordinance, it said we only have purview over things visible from a public right of way. So if you can't see it, we can't review it. We can't have building inspection cited for historic problems, so.
Okay, thank you
Okay,
very much.
sure.
I neglected to say earlier, let the record reflect that we've been joined by Councilwoman Darlene Harris and now Council President Bruce Kraus. President Kraus, would you wish to chair the meeting?
Stay here, stay here.
Question. This is the historic nomination that we're on presently. Is that correct? Okay. And have you gone into public comment yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
Questions before that.
Councilwoman Harris.
Are you saying there's a Woodland Road?
Yes.
Okay, because I didn't think we could have like a Woodland Road or Woodland Street.
Well, I can tell you the address of the nominated property is 118A Woodland Road, and that's what's tied to the parcel ID.
So is it a paper street or is it,
No, I mean,
or is it private property?
I think that's
The question.
part of the question. I can tell you that you'll probably hear some of that in the comments.
The meeting started like only 5 to 2 and I have a 2 o'clock. So
I think that's a question for the law department.
Okay.
I've heard different
And-
things.
To
And
answer
do
that
you know
question,
why-
Woodland Road is a private road. It's maintained by a private homeowners association. It's plowed and it's paved privately by the owners of the street, the residents of the street.
Yeah.
So it's not a city street.
I know that's problems with EMS though. if
Yeah.
They have too, and I have one in my district.
Yeah.
It's a street. The other question was, do you know why 2 people abstained on this?
I'm trying to remember. In planning commission or in HRC?
I think it was planning.
You know what? Well, I mean, I can tell you that. Well, I don't know why they abstained. I'll be honest with you, I don't.
Okay, I'll try to watch this if they put it on television. And my last question is, you said 79? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Thanks.
Sorry that the meeting started so late.
No, that's no worries.
For 1:30.
No, stay there, please. Can I ask a couple questions?
Absolutely.
I appreciate that, thank you. Councilman Burgess, okay. I was subliminally being chastised for being late, if you didn't pick up on that. But I was detained, I apologize, and thank you for doing this.
you.
So, I'm aware of this, the controversy surrounding
Yes.
the nomination of this property. If I understand it correctly, there's a desire to see the property demolished so a different structure can be built in conjunction with this property and additional property. Am I about right?
My understanding of the situation is that it, as I have been told, the building is in very poor condition. The current owners would like to remove it and just maintain open space.
Okay, but possibly build a different house adjoining this.
That I
Okay.
can't answer. I mean, clearly there would be space for it, but
Okay,
It's my understanding that there's no intention of building an additional house, that there's currently a refurbishment, historically accurate and architecturally accurate refurbishment of an architect's house at the front of the property. But I don't believe there's any intention to, as far as I've heard, to build
Rebuild.
any new structures.
only to demolish this structure.
Yes.
So I am rarely conflicted. You know me well, Sarah.
oh, I know you will.
I am rarely conflicted in these matters. The only other time I've ever been conflicted in terms of an historic nomination has been the Civic Arena. And I wrestled with that one for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks before I came to my decision. And this one, I have to say, I'm really conflicted on.
Well,
I shouldn't say conflicted, but this one I'm weighing, with considerable attention.
I think it's really important to remember that we discussed it before you came in. Is that because of the location of this house down into the swale, it's mighty likely we're not going to be able to.
Save it.
Well, we're not going to be able to do any historic review on anything meaningful, because if you don't see it from a public right, or even if the private road is considered public right of way, you still can't see much of this,
I'm not understanding why that weighs into the conversation.
because our ordinance says that the Historic Review Commission only has purview over things you can see from a public right of way.
I see. Okay.
And yeah. So I think, up until now, when we've gone to the Historic Review Commission, we've had to Historic Review Commission has very narrow items that they can consider. They have their 10 criteria for significance, and they have building integrity. That's all they can look at. And then Planning Commission has some different items as well. And ultimately, it's you guys that have purview over all decision-making matters when it comes to historic resources. You can consider anything. So that's why,
Is Woodland comes off of Wilkins behind the bed and breakfast there? If I got the right location?
It is off of Wilkins, yes.
Okay.
yeah,
What's the bed and breakfast by my?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I
it's
don't
right
live
on the
over
corner.
there.
It was- I hate that it's escaping me. Okay. I assume, may I ask this, Madam Chair? Is the Stanley Levine and Patricia Snyder, are you the owners of the property? Okay, and you're the owner of the property. Okay. Okay, thank you. So I'm going to wait for them to hear a comment. Thank you.
Okay.
I have no further questions. Thank
Okay.
you very much.
Sure.
Thank you.
Sorry I brought you a tough one.
Yeah, it is a tough one. It really is. Yes.
We will now move to testimony from registered speakers. When you come to the podium, please give your name and address for the public record. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to address council, and if you did not register in advance, after we have exhausted the list of registered speakers, we will open up testimony for those in the audience who would like to speak, and you'll receive 1 minute. So our first speaker is Stanley Levine, and on deck will be Matthew Falcone.
Good afternoon, President Kraus and Councilperson Strasburger. Thanks for coming to this hearing to hear what we have to say. My name is Stanley Levine. I'm a resident of the city of Pittsburgh. I live at 10 Darlington Court in Pittsburgh in Squirrel Hill area. And I also represent the Snyders, who are the owners of both 118 Woodland Road, which is a property that fronts Woodland Road, and 118A Woodland Road, which is the property that's been nominated for designation today. Would it be acceptable to you if I gave you a copy of our written objections? I filed them with the clerk on a couple of days ago. It will help you answer a lot of the questions that I heard you ask in terms of your perception of the property.
Clerk will distribute.
Pardon me?
If the clerk has them, she'll distribute.
Okay, sure.
Okay. But
You have 3 minutes, so you should keep going for now.
Yeah.
And then,
The property that we're talking about here is a property that requires anyone who would want to view it to participate in 2 acts of trespass. The first act of trespass would be entering Woodland Road, which is a private road maintained by the Woodland Road Homeowners Association. And the second act of trespass would be to actually go down the driveway to see the house. Can I invite your attention to the visuals so that you can see this? If you look at the written objections that we filed on the Exhibit B, in Exhibit A1. If you look at Exhibit A1, President Kraus, you'll see, and I identify you because I know
this is
Councilperson
what I thought.
Strasburg is very familiar with the situation. So this is the entry onto Woodland Road from Wilkins. This is basically across the street from the Tree of Life parking lot to give you some type of orientation. And if you look at the next couple of exhibits, you'll see that there's signs posted on that Woodland Road that say no trespassing. And if you go to Exhibit A5, you'll see very prominently that there's no trespassing on this road. It's restricted to private parties. You know, I am a lawyer. I can tell you without any reservation or hesitation that trespass in Pennsylvania is the incursion on a property intentionally without permission, without privilege or anything of that nature. So I would suggest to you that although this road is used commonly, it's primarily by virtue of the fact that Chatham University sits there and people have business with Chatham University and they use it regularly. And then, of course, the homeowners on Woodland Road have the right to invite people and guests to the property and they could use the road. If you look on Exhibit B, Exhibit B, it shows you the juxtaposition of the Snyder house, which fronts Woodland Road, 118 Woodland Road, which they own, and then its juxtaposition to the Abrams house, which sits directly behind it. If you turn the page, you'll see the Snyder house, which fronts on Woodland Road. That's 118A Woodland Road. That property is under that property's been in renovation since it was purchased in 2017 by the Snyders. And if you look at the next exhibit, you'll see the driveway that shows the Abrams house from Woodland Road. So anyone who wasn't trespassing over the Snyders' property would have to actually trespass over their driveway in order to get a frontal view of the property.
Mr. Levine, I'm sorry, that's 3 minutes.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
That's 3 minutes.
Yeah.
We're restricted to 3 minutes at these
I've
public
used the
hearings.
3 minutes?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
This was very helpful, though, Mr. Snyder. Thank you. This would be very helpful. Or Mr. Levine, forgive me. It'd be very helpful.
Could I ask for 1 more minute under the circumstances that we'll
Unfortunately, we can't
need to
bend the
go do
rules
that.
for anyone, but you're happy to, you're more than welcome to talk to any council member privately outside of this public forum.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
It doesn't involve a serious property interest, obviously. Somebody is being
You're
deprived.
welcome to stay behind. Okay.
Next up is Matthew Falcone, followed by Patricia Snyder.
As a point of clarification, I actually have testimony for the Abrams House and also the Westinghouse Memorial. May I save my Westinghouse Memorial comments until
Yes.
after we've kind of gone through the Abrams House?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. My name is Matthew Falcone. I live at 417 Lockhart Street. I'm here today representing Preservation Pittsburgh. We would like to acknowledge and commend the work of the Historic Review Commission and the Planning Commission, both of which considered the nomination solely on the merits within their purview. We agree with their findings. Clearly, the Abrams House is an exceptional piece of postmodernist architecture, and a prospective historical designation would not alter the residential character of the neighborhood in which it stands. However, it is apparent from the testimony provided before both of those bodies and now before your consideration today that circumstances beyond what they were able to consider exist and have bearing on your decision. The process by which historic nominations are considered by the city exists for this very reason. It allows community experts in a multitude of fields to interpret and apply criteria for evaluation that has existed for decades and permits them to provide recommendations for your consideration. It also establishes multiple forums in which the public is encouraged to participate and shape the discourse and our understanding of these cultural assets. We have many concerns about the future of this building and feel that one in particular deserves consideration. During each of the previous hearings, the prospect of moving the house to a location outside the city was mentioned as a possible avenue to ensure its continued existence. While we acknowledge the merits of that approach, we would add that a landmark placed on the city's historic register has not, to date, left the city to be relocated elsewhere. Deemed historic buildings, sites, and objects reflect a narrative unique to the experiences of who we are and were as Pittsburghers, and if they are deemed important enough to enjoy public protections, they should absolutely remain accessible to all of us here in the city. We are always disheartened when controversy surrounds a historic nomination, but know that current day circumstances that face endangered sites are as complex as the rich history they often embody. Respectfully, we would like to thank the Historic Review Commission and Planning Commission for their work. Thank you for your consideration. We will respect the outcome of your deliberations and decisions.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Next is Patricia Snyder, followed by Yvonne F. Brown.
Hi, thank you for taking the time. Patricia Snyder, I live in Sewickley, Pennsylvania. I'm not a public speaker, and I don't have any prepared remarks, but I can answer your questions. You asked a question about whether there was to be another building built in the stead of this house. I can tell you that I have learned to never say never, but right now, after what all of this is, all of the effort and energy and time that this has taken, right now, I have no plans for anything else other than green space and to maintain the 100-year-old bridge and to restore the Meyer House to its intended glory. I think it's worthy to note, really, when you're taking consideration of the architectural significance, I think that a name doesn't always mean that that is an architectural masterpiece. Every Picasso is not a masterpiece. I think the fact that I know to be true that the Abrams House, Venturi, did not even visit this house until nearly 10 years after it was completed. He walked away from it. If you really do study architecture, you may know that Venturi's buildings were not meant to last forever. In many cases, they were sometimes put up in spite, and he and Meyer were arch enemies. I'm not sure that your dates are complete that were given. I thought that it was the completed later, but I will tell you the Venturi house, he was an arch enemy of Richard Myers. And he would have thrown a piece of garbage up in order to figuratively throw a finger toward Meyer. Okay? It's much deeper than anybody would lead to believe in just the superficial arguments. And so there's question as to whether this building was even meant to last. But with Venturi walking away from it and not even completing it, it really leads question to how much he even cared about it. No matter what we say now, and he's gone to his reward, so we'll never really know aside from what has been. The house is in a state of gross degradation. Nobody wanted to save the house when given the opportunity. And now they want to come in through the back door and have other people do something they didn't wish to do.
Thank you, Mrs.
With all due
Snyder.
respect.
Okay, thank you.
Is it Ms. Brown here? Okay, absent Ms. Brown, we're moving on to Joel Censure, please. Joel? All right, so absent that, if anyone else wishes to speak, they can do so. Just list your name and your address or your association. You have 1 minute to speak. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Don Cortland. I live at 115 Grandview Avenue, Pittsburgh. I am the applicant for this nomination. And of course, speak in support. I'm the general counsel of Pittsburgh History and Landmarks Foundation, and you have the support of Pittsburgh History and Landmarks Foundation as well. I think the presentation by Sarah identified that the house is a significant piece of architecture and created by a world-renowned architect and meets the standards. On the issues of privacy from the road, I think that's something you should take up with the city law department. That's a fair point. In terms of our relationship with the house, we had a great relationship with the owner, and she made it available to the public, notwithstanding the private nature of the road. And while we thought we might receive it as a gift, that did not come to fruition, and we were never offered an opportunity to buy the building, which sold for $600,000. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cortland. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak today?
We don't know. Oh, she did. Then I don't know how to do that. Let's finish this and then bring it back to that. Are there speakers for the other one?
Are there any other speakers for the Westinghouse Memorial? We have one? Okay.
Just one? Let's conclude this and then take that one. Is that, can we do that?
That's fine
Would
with-
you be all right?
Is that okay with you?
Can I add something?
Absolutely.
So, I don't want to rush into anything in terms of this decision. I mentioned to the councilwoman, I'm going to petition a legal opinion from our law department in terms of the argument of trespass and the properties that need to be trespassed, if you believe that, in order to reach this property, and that there's not a condition that, or there is a condition that one must see it from a public right-of-way. I need to have a much clearer understanding. What I am going to ask is everyone that came here today to speak on this, I'd really like to meet with you. I'd like to make sure I have your cards before you leave, and I'd like to set up a time where we can actually sit down and hear each of your arguments in a more detailed environment so that I just have a better understanding of the arguments that are being made. And so for that, I'm going to ask the council not to consider this until we've been able to do that. And I'll make myself available as quickly as possible in which to do so. But I think this one in particular deserves a further discussion, a better understanding, and I don't want to rush into something and make a decision in haste that I may come to regret. So before you leave, just make certain that I have ways to communicate to each of you, and then we'll set something up where we can meet to discuss the furtherness of your arguments.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I will concur with your suggestion that we solicit the advice of the law department. I have had the opportunity to meet and talk with, many of those here today in detail, and I, very much understand the complexity and the nuances of the situation, and my door is always open. So I know that we've had the conversation. After today, my door is open. I'm happy to meet or talk with anyone who opposes or is in favor of this historic nomination, because it is a very complex and.
So will you join me in that then? Because you have a better understanding than I do.
I would be happy to. I think that whatever is your desire, I'm happy to be there, not be there at those meetings. I've like I said, I have a lot of the background information. I've met several times with many people here today, and I'm eager for other council members to get that same information.
That would help. Thank you.
Excellent.
Thanks for being here.
So I'm going to actually adjourn this public hearing, and then we'll. Even though we've already.
Are they separate? Okay. Okay. So we'll just take.
So we'll just take the. Okay, so we will now open it back up to public hearing specifically for the Westinghouse Memorial. So if anyone wishes to testify regarding Westinghouse Memorial historic nomination, they're welcome to do so.
Hi, Matthew Falcone, 417 Lockhart Street. I'm the nominator of the Westinghouse Memorial. I did want to read several things. I wanted to thank the Department of Public Works for the partnership on this, as well as Councilman O'Connor and the Pittsburgh Parks Conservancy. In our research of this, we came across something really interesting that I wanted to read onto public record. So I'm reading from the October 30th edition of WABCO, which is the Westinghouse Air Brake Company's newsletter about the Westinghouse Memorial. It says that on the back of the central panel is a hermetically sealed compartment which contains a roster of all those who contributed to the creation of this monument. The modern thought that a sealed cinematographic film of the dedication proceedings will be placed in this compartment is extremely interesting because it establishes a record more interesting and vivid depicting the times than what is generally found in the cornerstones of buildings. So there's basically a time capsule in the back of Westinghouse Memorial, and it has the only copy only film of the dedication ceremony itself. It's something that unfortunately was overlooked during the last refurbishment of the Westinghouse Memorial, but perhaps the next one we'll be able to get it. It's the only record of it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Falcone. Are there any other speakers regarding the Westinghouse Memorial? Seeing none, that concludes the business of this public hearing. So having exhausted the business of this public hearing, this meeting is adjourned.